16 feet of salt water. Now, the first people to live on this island were the Passamaquoddy First Nations people. They first started living here on this island around 2,500 years ago. They would spend their summers here on this island, and when the weather got worse, they headed back over to the mainland to get more shelter. It would have been after them in the 1790s, not long after the American Revolution. A lot of the loyalists would come up from the States. They would settle in the town of St. Andrews. One person, however, named Reverend Samuel Andrews, he decided he was going to build a house here on this island. He built the white stone cottage in 1791. It is still up to date. It's right behind the barn. It has that orange tarp on one side. Now, he was the first Anglican minister in the town of St. Andrews. He is the reason that we're actually known as Minister's Island. It would have been 100 years after him, the Van Horne family would move to this island, and they would build the 23-building summer estate. Now, the Van Horne family, they got their fame and wealth because of Sir William Van Horne. Now, he was born in 1843 in Joliet, Illinois. By the time he turned 14, he decided he was going to quit school to begin work on the railroads. Now, he started out with the Illinois Central Railway. Within a few months of working there, he worked his way up to telegraph officer. He would have stayed down there for most of his early life, working his way up the ranks, until he would have become the superintendent of all the railroads down in Illinois. Now, it would have been in 1881 he was invited up to Canada to become the general manager of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. This railroad stretches all the way across Canada, uniting us from east to west coast. Now, he was the general manager during its construction. He was given 10 years to build it, and he managed to get it built in 4.5 years and under budget. This was quite the impressive feat. He was knighted by Queen Victoria for his work on the railroad. After the railroad's completion, he would then become the president of it. He would move up to Canada to live here year-round. He was also a family man. He would marry Lady Lucy Hurd. Together they would have 2 kids. They would have a daughter named Adeline, who we call Miss Addie, and then they would have a son named Richard Benedict, who we call Benny. Benny had a son of his own named Billy. Now, the family would spend their summers here on this island between June to October. When the weather got worse, they had their own private train station just on the opposite side of the bar road. That would take them straight to their winter home, which was over in Montreal, Quebec. Now, when Sir William Van Horne passed away in 1915 at the age of 72, his daughter, Miss Addie, would inherit this 500-acre island. Miss Addie, she loved this place. She'd run it the same way her father did up until her passing in 1941. Now, when she passed away, because she would never marry or have kids of her own, this island went back to her brother's side of the family. However, by this point, her brother had passed away, and so had his son, Billy. Billy did have a daughter, however, named Beverly Ann Van Horne. She would inherit this island, however, she was only 9 years old when she did. Being that young, she couldn't run the place. It had to be given over to the Royal Trust. Now, when she became of age, she'd run this island herself for a couple of years, and then she sold it off in 1961 to a group of American investors. These investors, they came up onto this island. There were a couple different groups. They all had different ideas. One group tried to turn this island into a golf course. Another group would try to renovate the home to like a hunting lodge/hotel. There was even an airstrip put on this island at one point. None of these plans ever really worked out. It kept trading hands all the way up until 1977, when the owners at the time decided they too would have lost money on their investments. So they would have held a 3-day auction inside the main room of the summer cottage. It would have been during that auction they would have sold around 90 to 95% of the original furniture inside the home. It would have been on the 3rd day of that auction that the province of New Brunswick would step in. The province would buy the house, the island, and everything left on it. Once this island got owned by the provincial government, they would close all the buildings down and they would turn this into a wildlife management area, as well as designate it as a federal and provincial historic site. The buildings would stay closed up until 1992, when the buildings were back open for tour, and it then would have been in 2004 that our group would have come around, and we released the island from the provincial government. We raised money through fundraisers and donations to keep the buildings of the island up and running. So that's a brief overview of the history of the family and the island. Now to talk about the buildings. The house here is called Kopenhoven. Now that is Dutch for a safe place or a safe harbor. It is a 50-room summer cottage with 17 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, and 11 fireplaces. Down towards the ocean, you can see the outline of their bathhouse. It is a 2-story building made of the sandstone. The top floor has windows that go all the way around. The bottom floor has the original changing rooms and an access point onto the beach. On the beach, there is a 50 by 50 by about 2 feet deep hole. It was 8 feet deep when it was dug. That's where they would have gotten all the sandstone to build the bathhouse, all the pillars here at the main house, as well as some of the fireplaces inside the home. They would have used that hole to swim in when the tide would go over and then repeat again. Around the corner that way, there are two more buildings. The first one, which is made out of stone, is the garage. It is closed, however, straight behind it, the white wooden building is open. That's the carriage house. It has one of the original carriages still inside of it. Then straight behind the home, there are two small buildings. The smallest of the two is the gas hut. They would have produced settling gas inside that building. They made it by mixing carbide pellets with water. That gas was pumped throughout the home. It would have been used for lighting up until the 1950s, when they then switched over to electricity. The other building behind the home, that taller one with that windmill on top. The windmill is just a decorative piece. There would have been two motors inside that building to draw up water from the underground wells, where they put it into a holding tank, which was a train cut that they managed to bury 20 feet underground. Now the last building left on this side of the island is behind our parking lot over that way. It is a yellow wooden building called the Gardener's Cottage. It is closed, however you can walk down there, see the original stone foundations for the greenhouses that were once there. So when you do go inside the home, off on the left-hand side, the first room is our gift shop, the second is a video information room. They both used to be Sir William Van Horne's private libraries. In between the two, you can still see the original bookcase. It'd be above that bookcase is a painting depicting the last spike of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. Now, that painting was done in 1977, but the spike would have been driven in 1885. Now, the person driving in the spike is Sir Donald Smith, who would have been the senior manager, kind of the money man of the operation. It'd be to our left-hand side, the man with the pointy black goatee, that would have been Sir William Van Horne. Now, the last room inside the home I'm going to talk about before I let you go is the first room off on the right-hand side. Now, that is actually Sir William Van Horne's bedroom. While his wife and the rest of the family slept upstairs on the second floor, Sir William Van Horne thought sleep was nothing but a bad habit. He would only sleep a couple hours throughout the night. He was often up throughout the night, either painting or doing business work. He put his bedroom right off the front doors down. When he did wake up, he could walk down to his bathhouse and paint without disturbing the rest of the household. Now, the painting above the fireplace when you first walk in, the painting above his bedroom, as well as all the paintings in his bedroom, in his red studio room off on the right-hand side, all those paintings were done by him. So if you have any more questions as you're going throughout the home, please feel free to reach out to me or any of my colleagues wearing the orange. Will be happy to give you all an answer. And I hope you all enjoy your time on the island today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.